You think North Korea wakes up every day terrified of American aircraft carriers. That used to be true, but today Pyongyang's biggest military fear is closer, faster, and far harder to deter because it lives right across the DMZ. South Korea is no longer just the other Korea. In Kim Jong-un's own messaging, it is now the principal enemy. And that shift tells you exactly what North Korea fears most right now. Let's get straight to the point. For decades, the North built its propaganda and its strategy around one nightmare scenario: a US-led decapitation strike, regime collapse, and foreign troops rolling into Pyongyang. The story was simple. America is the invader. America is the existential threat. So North Korea needs nukes to keep America out. But the military reality around the peninsula has changed. The United States still matters. US bombers still fly, US submarines still patrol, and US alliances still shape the region. Yet the thing that keeps North Korea's leadership up at night is no longer primarily an American invasion. It is the possibility that South Korea can locate the regime's critical nodes and smash them quickly, using precision conventional weapons, backed by tighter US coordination and supported by a regional security network that makes limited conflict far harder for Pyongyang to manage. This is the uncomfortable truth. North Korea is still dangerous. It still has a growing nuclear force. It still threatens preemptive use in its doctrine, but the center of gravity has shifted. From US boots on the ground to South Korean kill chains, bunker busters, and the regime's fear that it could lose control in the first hours of a crisis. So what changed? And what does North Korea fear now? Start with something Kim's government made unusually explicit. In January 2024, Kim Jong-un called for constitutional changes and ideological education that frame South Korea as a primary foe and the principal enemy. That is not normal rhetoric, even by North Korean standards. It is strategic messaging. When a regime that has spent generations centering the United States as the villain suddenly elevates the South as the main enemy, it is revealing where it sees the sharpest threat. A lot of people hear that and assume it means North Korea is preparing to invade the South. Maybe. It could also mean something more immediate and more defensive. Pyongyang is preparing its population and its military for a world where the most plausible threat to regime survival comes from Seoul's capabilities and Seoul's proximity, not just Washington's power. Because geography changes everything. The United States is an ocean away. South Korea is right there. Its sensors can stare into the north every day. Its missiles do not need to cross the Pacific. Its aircraft do not need tanker chains from Guam. Its special operations forces train for the terrain. And if a crisis hits, South Korea is already in theater on day one. That is a very different kind of pressure than distant US power. Now layer on South Korea's strategic concept, what Seoul calls the three-axis system. This is not one weapon. It is a framework built around finding North Korea's launch preparations and command and control early, striking before missiles can fly if an attack is judged imminent, and then punishing leadership in key nodes if deterrence fails. You will hear the terms kill chain, Korea air and missile defense, and Korea massive punishment and retaliation. Those are not YouTube buzzwords. They are official concepts, repeatedly discussed in policy and analysis. Here is why that scares Pyongyang more than the old American invasion story. A US invasion is dramatic, expensive, slow to assemble, and politically obvious. North Korea can plan around it and threaten nuclear escalation to deter it. A South Korean precision strike campaign is different. It is faster, more ambiguous in its early phases, and it targets the regime's confidence that it can control escalation. Think about what Kim's inner circle values most. Not territory, not even military glory. They value survivals and control. The danger to them is a scenario where communications break, hardened facilities are penetrated, air defenses are saturated, and the ability to orchestrate nuclear signaling collapses under pressure. And South Korea has been investing in exactly the kind of tools designed for that mission. The headline example in late 2024 and into 2025 is the Hyunmoo-5, a South Korean ballistic missile widely described as a bunker buster with a very heavy warhead, presented publicly and discussed as a central piece of deterrence against North Korea's hardened underground facilities. Arms control and defense analysis outlets have described it specifically in terms of penetrating hardened targets, and South Korean officials have framed it as part of a balance of terror concept using conventional missiles. From Pyongyang's perspective, that is terrifying for a simple reason. Their whole system is built to ride out bombing, hardened bunkers, tunnels, underground command posts, buried artillery, hidden launchers. If South Korea fields conventional weapons explicitly meant to crack that shell, then even without nuclear weapons, Seoul is signaling it can threaten the leadership's sanctuary. Now add the fact that this is not happening in a vacuum. U.S. and South Korean coordination on nuclear and strategic planning has deepened since the Washington Declaration in April 2023, including the creation of the Nuclear Consultative Group to strengthen extended deterrence and coordination. There have even been publicly acknowledged simulations tied to that mechanism. That matters because it reduces Pyongyang's hope that it can split Seoul and Washington in a crisis. And on top of that, you have the tighter trilateral alignment among the United States, Japan, and South Korea after the Camp David summit in August 2023, with commitments to deeper security cooperation and more routine coordination. Again, from Pyongyang's point of view, this isn't just the Americans might show up. This is a security web that shortens decision time and increases the chance that North Korea faces a unified front. So if the United States is still there, why am I saying North Korea's biggest fear is no longer the US? Because the scariest military problem for Pyongyang is the near-term, near-theater, high-precision threat to regime control. South Korea can strike faster. South Korea can gather intelligence faster. South Korea can apply pressure without triggering the same global political alarms as an American invasion force assembling. And crucially, South Korea's very existence undermines North Korea in a way the United States never can. This is the second layer of fear. The regime fears information and legitimacy warfare as much as it fears missiles. When leaflets, USB sticks, and outside media cross the border, Pyongyang reacts as if it is facing a biological weapon. That is not an exaggeration. Look at how tense the balloon and drone episodes have been. With North Korea sending trash balloons south, South Korean activists sending materials north, and Pyongyang issuing sharp warnings about provocations and control of its airspace. Reuters has documented the scale of North Korea's trash balloon campaign and the way it became a sustained source of tension. The Guardian has reported on activists sending K-pop and USB sticks, and the back-and-forth escalation around that. And there is a reason. The United States can threaten North Korea militarily. South Korea threatens North Korea culturally, economically, and psychologically. South Korea is proof, in the same language on the same peninsula, that a Korean state can be modern, wealthy, and connected. That comparison is the regime's nightmare, because it attacks the myth that the Kim system is the only path to survival. That is why Kim's pivot away from reunification language is so significant. When North Korea drops the idea of peaceful reunification and dismantles reunification organs, it is not just diplomatic theater. It is building an ideological wall. It is telling its people, stop imagining one Korea. Stop imagining family ties. Stop imagining shared destiny, because that emotional bridged one is a vulnerability. Now let's tie this back to military fear. Modern deterrence is not only about who has the bigger bomb, it is about who can control escalation, who can prevent decapitation, and who can keep their command structure intact when the first wave hits. North Korea's nuclear doctrine, as analyzed by Arms Control and Security Research, has openly discussed conditions for nuclear use that include threats to leadership and critical command structures, including potential response to non-nuclear attacks that endanger regime control. In other words, Pyongyang itself admits that leadership targeting and command disruption are red lines. So what happens when South Korea builds a strategy that is interpreted as leadership targeting and command disruption? You get a regime that feels cornered, a regime that sees South Korea not as a junior partner under US protection, but as the spear point that could end the Kim dynasty quickly if deterrence fails. This is why I think North Korea's biggest fear has shifted. The United States remains the ultimate backstop, but the immediate blade is South Korea's evolving conventional strike complex. Now let's talk about drones, because drones are the new accelerant in this whole equation. North Korea has been loudly highlighting drones in its own military development, including tests of so-called exploding drones reported in international coverage, with messaging that drones are vital in modern warfare. That is North Korea learning from global conflicts and trying to adapt. But here is the twist. Drones are also a regime vulnerability because drones lower the barrier to intrusion, propaganda delivery, surveillance, and deniable provocation. North Korea has accused South Korea of flying drones over Pyongyang to drop leaflets, and reporting has described North Korea raising border readiness in response. Whether every detail is true or not, the reaction is the story. Pyongyang treated it as a serious threat because even the idea that hostile drones can penetrate the capital is an assault on the regime's image of total control. Now step back. If cheap drones can cross airspace, if surveillance can be persistent, if precision strike can be cued faster, then the timeline for a crisis compresses even more. And compressed timelines favor the side that is already positioned and already integrated, that is South Korea. South Korea does not need weeks to deploy into theater. It is the theater. So if you are Kim Jong-un, your fear is not only, can the US invade? Your fear is, can my system survive 48 hours of coordinated pressure from the South, backed by US intelligence and alliance planning, before my control breaks? That is the core of the new fear. Now, to keep this factual, let's define what we can say with confidence versus what is analysis. Fact: North Korea has publicly shifted its political line to frame South Korea as the principal enemy and has moved away from reunification language, as reported by Reuters and the Associated Press. Fact: South Korea has an established strategic framework, often described as the three-axis system, including kill chain and retaliatory concepts, and analysts have discussed its offensive and preemptive dilemmas in detail. Fact: the United States and South Korea created the Nuclear Consultative Group under the Washington Declaration to strengthen extended deterrence coordination, as stated in official government releases. Fact: South Korea has publicly unveiled the Hyunmoo-5 missile, and it has been widely described as a powerful system intended to threaten hardened targets, as covered by Politico and analyzed by arms control reporting and defense analysts. Now, the analysis. My opinion is that these pieces together create a psychological map of what Pyongyang fears most. Not an American amphibious assault, but a South Korean-led, alliance-backed conventional campaign that threatens the regime's sanctuary, and a South Korean information pressure that threatens the regime's legitimacy. If you want a simple way to say it, the United States threatens North Korea's military. South Korea threatens North Korea's entire narrative of why the Kim family must rule. And those are not the same. Let's go deeper into the mechanics of deterrence, because this is where people misunderstand North Korea. Deterrence against North Korea isn't just nuclear, it is also about whether North Korea believes it can start something, control escalation, and extract concessions without risking regime destruction. In the old model, North Korea feared that any major attack might trigger US regime change. That fear supported deterrence. In the newer model, North Korea has to worry that a crisis could spiral fast, even without US intent to invade, because South Korea has both the will and the tools to hit the heart of the regime's war-making machine. And because alliance mechanisms reduce the chance of confusion between Seoul and Washington. That makes salami-slicing provocations riskier for Pyongyang. Balloons, maritime clashes, artillery duels, drone incidents, all of it now sits on top of a more lethal conventional equation. And we have seen North Korea lean into this tension play. There was the demolition of inter-Korean road and rail links near the border in October 2024, reported by the Associated Press, which was symbolic, but also a signal that Pyongyang is hardening the separation narrative. Symbolism matters here. When you physically cut links, you reduce pathways for de-escalation and dialogue. That increases the risk of miscalculation, which is exactly the environment where short timelines and precision strike doctrines become most dangerous. Now, I want to address a question viewers will ask. If South Korea is the main fear, why does North Korea still talk about the United States constantly? Because propaganda is sticky. The United States is still the perfect external enemy for domestic control. It justifies militarization, it blames sanctions, it unifies the population against a foreign other. But internal regime survival logic is not the same as public propaganda logic. In public, the United States remains the villain. In private, the South is the immediate threat, with the most direct line to regime collapse. That is why Kim's rhetoric shifted in a way that would have been almost unthinkable a decade ago. You do not call the South the principal enemy unless you have decided the South is central to the threat environment. Now, there is one more angle that modern audiences miss. North Korea's growing partnership with Russia, including reported transfers of weapons and potential troop deployments, may look like confidence, but it also reveals insecurity. Reuters reporting has cited South Korean assessments that North Korea is preparing additional troops and equipment, including drones, for Russia, with the possibility that Pyongyang gains combat experience and technology exposure. That tells you North Korea believes it needs rapid modernization and real-world lessons. And why would it need that? Because South Korea's military is modern, networked, and increasingly built around precision. North Korea knows it cannot match that symmetrically, so it seeks asymmetric tools, missiles, cyber, special operations, and now drones. But asymmetric tools are often best for coercion and disruption, not for protecting a regime against precise leadership-targeted conventional strike, which brings us to the most dangerous dynamic on the peninsula today. Both sides have doctrines that revolve around striking early if they believe the other is about to strike. South Korea's kill chain concept is designed to act on signs of imminent North Korean launch preparations. North Korea's doctrine and legal framing, as described by arms control analysis and Reuters coverage, include conditions that would allow nuclear use if leadership and critical systems are threatened. You do not need to be a strategist to see the problem. If one side believes it must strike first to prevent a launch, and the other side believes leadership targeting is a trigger for nuclear response, then the crisis ladder becomes steep and slippery. That is why North Korea fears South Korea's precision capabilities so intensely. They are not just weapons, they are a threat to the regime's confidence that it can ride out a crisis and still be in charge at the end. Now let's bring it home for your viewers with a clear answer. North Korea's biggest military fear is no longer the United States, because the most immediate, credible, and destabilizing threat to regime survival is a South Korean-led precision strike and pressure campaign that can unfold quickly, close to home, and in ways that are hard to deter with the old playbook. The United States is still the heavyweight, but South Korea is the blade at the throat. And if you want proof that Pyongyang sees it that way, you do not have to guess. Look at the policy pivot. Look at the constitutional language. Look at the demolition of inter-Korean links. Look at the panic around drone intrusions and information warfare. This is a regime trying to seal itself off from the South while preparing for a more lethal military contest across the DMZ. So what does this mean for the future? My view is that the peninsula is entering a period where the deterrence story becomes less about the United States versus North Korea and more about South Korea versus North Korea, with the United States acting as an integrated strategic backbone. That increases stability in one sense, because Pyongyang has fewer illusions it can break the alliance, but it also increases risk, because faster timelines and preemption logic leave less room for political off-ramps. And finally, this is important for YouTube and for realism. None of this means war is inevitable. Deterrence can hold. Channels of communication can reopen. But if you want to understand the new era, you have to stop treating North Korea's main fear as an American invasion fantasy and start treating it as a near-term fear of rapid conventional defeat and regime destabilization, driven by South Korea's growing precision strike capability and the ideological threat the South represents. If you want to cover this story responsibly, the headline is not that America is irrelevant. America is still critical. The headline is that the most dangerous pressure on North Korea is now local, fast, and tailored to the regime's most sensitive vulnerability, control. And if the Kim regime believes control can be lost quickly, then that is when the world has to worry most about escalation, because regimes that feel cornered behave unpredictably. That is the new Korean Peninsula equation, and it is why North Korea's biggest fear is no longer the United States,